Hey guys, this is Knightfall and welcome to a new series that I've decided to create called Learning Conquest. This series is gonna teach new Conquest players the basics about Conquest, while also giving complex details with the help of players in the Oceanic Pro League. So what this series is gonna cover is laning phases, rotating, building, team fights, role specifics to every role, player mindsets, positioning, all that sort of stuff. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Throw it in the comments section. I'll read through all of them and I'll try to answer them as best as possible. This first video will cover the lobby and its unwritten rules, each playable role, laning, camps, and team fights. So let's get straight into it. Before we even get into the match, let's talk about the lobby. The lobby is the most important part of the game. This is where the players call their role to be played in the match, and there's a community creative way of doing this. The general etiquette is the first person to type which role they want to play. They'll be the one to play the role in the match. Notice that it's called roll call and not lane call. So here are some do's and don'ts of the lobby. Type your preferred role in the chat before the accept button appears, then hit enter as soon as you go into the lobby to ensure that you get it first. If you don't get your preferred role, call another one. If you are left with a role that you don't like or can't play, ask to switch, and if no one wants to switch, then consider it practice for the role that you aren't good at. Do not auto-lock. It is considered bad manners and will make the whole team hate you from the start of the match, which ends up in bad team synergy and thus more likelihood of a loss of a game. Don't call two roles in one message. Things like your preferred role in order is not an acceptable way of calling the roles you want. Don't call left, right, or duo as calling left and right is not a valid way of calling what you want. This is because the lanes will switch depending on which side of the map you spawn on, which you cannot tell until you're in the game. Do not lock in a role after someone else has called it. This is again very bad manners. Be nice to the team from the moment you are matched with them, and the game will be much better for everyone playing. Here's more information on the roles in Conquest. Like in any MOBA style game, there are specific roles that players can play. So here are Smites. We've got solo, jungle, mid, support, which is also known as guardian, and attack damage carry, abbreviated to ADC and also known as hunter. So let's start it off with hunters. Hunters, or ADC as they're more commonly known, are one of the main 2 damage sources of the team. In the early game they are weak by themselves, which is why they require support to get them to the point where they can be self-sufficient. Usually this is around the time they finish their first life steal item. ADC is the strongest damage source in the late game. Because the ADC is the main damage source of the team, they have no defenses, so the team must protect them so that the ADC can deal their DPS or damage per second. If the ADC dies, then most of the damage for the team is lost, and unless the team can kill the enemy ADC, then the fight is almost always lost. Positioning is the ADC's greatest weapon, and with great positioning comes great rewards, as a good position means you can deal your maximum amount of damage without having any trouble from the team trying to kill you. ADC for Vanguard Subfloor describes the role with the following quote: "The ADC role is all about being a consistent source of damage for your team. Positioning is vital to the role as your high damage is counterweighted by your lack of defenses. Your primary goal is to stay alive for as long as possible in fights, as there is no limit to the amount of damage you can do. Stay behind your front line until they find an opening, then go all in and secure the kill." Supports are the tanks of the team who have a lot of CC and are typically the initiator, the starter of the fights. The support and the ADC make up the duo lane where the towers are further apart, and the supports will stay with the ADC in lane until the ADC can be self-sustainable. After that, the support will roam to mid and help out via and become almost second jungler. Gaining gold on a support is a challenge as they have to share farm with the ADC, so they will buy Watcher's Gift early as it gives them gold when they see a minion die. The priority of getting kills also goes to the ADC, as the earlier they get damage, the greater the lead your team will have. It is arguable, however, that supports getting kills also makes it easier for them to finish their movement speed boots, which increases their mobility while out of combat and thus their ganking potential. Direwolf support player Richard Castle says basically the role of a support is to initiate, peel and to farm. Split everything with everyone wherever you can. A good support will control the game by starting good fights and by disengaging from bad ones. Knowing which is which comes down to map and game awareness. Knowing matchups, team compositions, cooldowns and targets will help you to make the best decisions throughout the game. Mid lane is the magical damage carry. These are the guys that deal a lot of damage in a short amount of time, or better said, burst damage. Many mages deal their damage in an area of effect, or AoE. This means that they can hit many targets at the same time. The mage is a large portion of the damage on the team. However, if they can deal their burst damage and take out one or both enemy carriers before dying, then that's great. Still, it is better not to die so that they can continue dealing their damage to win the fight and not have to wait to respawn to be able to do anything else. Mages can be straight up damage like Agni and Anubis, but some can also be played as a support mage, which is half damage and half utility, such as Isis, Giannis, or Hel, whose kit is literally half damage and half support. Mid is very deceiving in terms of difficulty. Mid lane is the lane which has the most impact in the early game, as it's the highest traffic point on the map with those mid camps. Mid laner for Avant-Garde Ochida explains the role of a mid laner. Depending on the type of team composition you are going for, the two main roles of a mid laner are either utility or damage. Most mid lane gods are also quite susceptible to damage, and you will often be the target god the enemy wants to kill, so positioning is essential for staying alive and maximizing the use of rotations of your cooldowns on your abilities. This means more utility or damage for your team, for example more Ra heals or Giannis vortexes. Since you are positioned in the middle of the map, it is also crucial to keep track of which jungle enemies rotate into and relay that information to your allies to prevent potential gank opportunities. Mid-gods also tend to have the most impactful ultimates in teamfights, allowing you to completely win an engagement for your team with one well-placed ability. To simplify, it's a mid's job to not die and fuck shit up. Jungle is arguably the hardest role to learn as a new player, and knowing where to be and when to be there is extremely difficult to learn without knowing the possible strategies that your team can execute and countering the enemy strategies. Junglers are the role that roam around in between lanes and help the lanes that may be in need of assistance. Junglers are usually assassins with high mobility and high damage, being the ones that are sought after the most. They will take the speed buff at the start of the game and then help the solo laner take their blue buff. After that, the route the jungler takes is extremely dynamic. Ro, jungler for Avant-Garde, explains the role. The role of a jungler is difficult to summarize as it's very flexible. At the least, your job is to control the pace of the jungle and assist your lanes wherever needed. You can achieve most of this through ganks and efficient farming. Players that are brand new to the role should focus on the respawn timers of jungle camps. Also remember you'll need the help of your teammates to clear during the early game. Slowly but surely you'll develop a rhythm, and from there you can incorporate jungle invades and stronger ganks. Solo laners reside in the lane with the shortest distance between the towers. Solo laners are typically warrior class gods that try to out-sustain the enemy in lane and be the all-up in your grill playstyle in the late game. They will usually take teleport early so that they can have more of an impact to the rest of the team and can help the team snowball into late game. During late game, the warriors are half tank, half damage, which makes it very difficult for an ADC or mage to get rid of them quickly. This is where Peel comes in, but we'll discuss that in a later episode. Double solo laner Yada describes the solo lane role as the following. As a solo laner, you have two basic jobs: get as much farm as possible and have as much presence as possible in your team's fights. The presence can come in different forms such as frontline, disruption, damage, etc. It is because of the varying natures of your contribution that so many gods can be played to great effect in the solo lane, but those two jobs are the core of the role. Let's talk about laning. The map is divided into 3 lanes separated by the jungle. The names of the lanes are duo lane, mid lane, solo lane, and the jungle. We won't get too basic, so let's jump the gun and talk about the laning phase. This is the time in the game where everyone goes to their lanes to farm up gold, while doing their best to kill the enemy gods. Constantly fighting is not an option like in Arena. You have to pick your moments to try to kill the enemy or force them out of lane by getting them low on health and forcing them to recall. This will make them lose experience and gold, meaning you gain a lead. The laning phase usually ends around the time that either team decides to group up and push because they have hit their power spike or gained a lead large enough so that they can group up and push a lane, but just like everything in Smite, it's situational. Camps are pretty simple to understand. Red goes to mid, attack speed goes to ADC, speed goes to jungle, and blue goes to the solo laner. These camps will spawn at 10 seconds after minions have spawned. To start the game, the support and ADC will help the mid laner take the red buff. They must make sure that they get the experience though from the buff dying before leaving to take the attack speed. The jungler and solo laner kill the speed buff for the jungler to take, then they go to blue buff, which the solo laner will take. The smaller camps are worth experience and gold only, but because of that are the best source of farm for the junglers, but they still need to leech off laners' minions. The mid camps are the highest traffic point in the early game, and control over these camps gives the controller the lead over the enemy. Teamfights are 80% of the time the event that wins the game, unless you're lucky enough to have someone so far ahead the enemy surrenders before the first teamfight. Let's break down a teamfight into its components. The support is the initiator, the one who starts the fight by blinking or dashing in and getting as many enemies in the crowd control as possible, for example a Ymir stun or Sylvanas knocker. After the fight has started, the mage will try to get as many enemies in their burst damage as possible. At the same time, the warrior will jump in and force the carries of the enemy to fight them instead of getting into a position that could mean the demise of an allied carry. While all of this is going on, the ADC will be dealing their DPS to the priority targets. During all of this, the assassin will be hovering around the outside of the fight trying to get into a position to kill the carries of the enemy. A teamfight will usually occur when sieging a tower or contesting an objective such as Gold Fury or Fire Giant. Two terms that will come in handy are frontliners and squishies. The support and warriors are called the frontliners due to being at the front of the fight and the ones who take the damage for the carries. The carries are called squishies because they are so easily killed. And to take us out, here's a quick tip. If someone is being rude or trolling or generally being BM, hit this mute button and then report them after the match. High-res look at every report about a player. The more detail you give, the more likely that person is to be banned. We will go over the details that are required for each of these topics of Conquest in future episodes. Remember, this one is just an overview. The next episode will be a detailed explanation of how to watch Smite as a spectator sport and what to look for during pro matches. Following that will be an episode dedicated to Hunters. Thank you very much for watching and make sure to subscribe. We'll see you next time.